He thought I was still the obedient daughter he could strike in God's house. But that Sunday morning, as his fist swung down, he didn't notice who sat beside me. The woman in the blue blazer, her hand touching the recording device glowing red, one blow before the congregation, one live stream already running, one doctored ledger exposed, and one pair of handcuffs clicking shut as softly as turning pages. The only question left was how many would fall with him. My name is Grace Whitaker, and I've been counting money for as long as I've been counting bruises. Not the physical kind. Leonard was too smart for that. At least until that final Sunday. No, the bruises I tallied were the invisible ones. Every dismissal, every humiliation, every dollar that vanished from Harvest Gate Fellowship's building fund into my stepfather's pockets. I'd moved back to Arden Falls 11 months ago. My divorce papers were still crisp in their manila folder, 33 years old, a decade of experience as a risk management specialist at Northgate Mutual. And here I was, sleeping in what used to be the storage room of my mother's house. The room still smelled like mothballs and my teenage shame. Temporary, Mom had said, not meeting my eyes. Just until you get back on your feet. But Leonard Pike had other ideas. The moment I crossed the threshold, he'd made it clear. I was a burden, a failure, living proof that the Whitaker women couldn't keep a man. Never mind that I paid more than my fair share in rent. Never mind that I bought groceries, cleaned, and tried to disappear into the wallpaper when he came home from his contracting jobs, sawdust in his hair and calculation in his eyes. My half-brother Kyle got the upstairs bedroom with the bay window. At 25, he still lived at home. He still had Mom iron his shirts. He still called Leonard Dad, with the kind of easy affection I'd never managed to fake. The golden child conceived within wedlock. Carrying the Pike name like a badge of honor. I got the basement room, with the water stain on the ceiling and the door that didn't quite close. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. I'd come home early from the bank. A system update had knocked out our computers. I found Leonard in the dining room, papers spread across Mom's good tablecloth, church documents, building fund reports, invoices from Pike Renovations, his contracting company. Grace, he didn't look up. Make yourself useful and grab me a beer. I should have just done it. I should have grabbed the cause from the fridge and retreated to my dungeon. But something about the way the afternoon light hit those papers, the way the numbers lined up in neat columns, triggered my professional instincts. Is that the church's new roof project? I asked, setting the beer down carefully. His hand paused over a deposit slip. Church business isn't your business, he retorted. I could help, I heard myself saying. I work with financial documents every day. If you need someone to. I started. I need you to remember whose roof you're under, he said, his voice soft and dangerous. The church hired me because they trust me. 20 years as head of the finance committee. I don't need some divorced bank teller poking around sacred funds. Risk management specialist. I didn't correct him. Instead, I backed away, but not before my eyes caught something that made my pulse skip. A transfer receipt. $50,000 from the building fund to an account I didn't recognize. The pay line read, Frontier Supplies LLC. That night, I lay in my mothball-scented cave and did what I do best. I analyzed risk. Leonard had been managing Harvest Gate's finances since before he married Mom. The congregation loved him, the self-made contractor, who'd kept their books balanced and their building standing. Pastor Hale deferred to him on all financial matters. The perfect position for someone with flexible ethics and a gambling habit Mom pretended didn't exist. I thought about the transfer receipt, about Frontier Supplies LLC, about the way Leonard's jaw had tightened when I'd offered help. At Northgate Mutual, we had a saying, where there's one cockroach, there's a colony. I'd found my first cockroach, Now I just had to figure out how deep the infestation went, without Leonard crushing me like the pest he already believed I was. The numbers haunted me. $50,000 to Frontier Supplies LLC. At the bank, I'd seen every type of fraud imaginable: shell companies, ghost invoices, circular transfers. This had all the hallmarks of a classic embezzlement scheme. I started small. Sunday after service, I volunteered to help count the offering with Ava Boone, the church's young treasurer. She was 26, fresh out of accounting school, eager to please. More importantly, she was overwhelmed. Leonard usually handles the deposits, she said, sorting bills with nervous fingers. He says it's easier if he does it all himself. Of course he did. Must be a lot of paperwork with the roof project, I said casually, rubber banding a stack of 20s. Ava's face clouded. It's been complicated. We've had to issue 3 separate payments to suppliers this month. Leonard says it's normal for a project this size, but... She glanced around, then leaned closer. Some of the invoices look weird to me. Same amounts, different dates, but Leonard says I'm too inexperienced to understand construction billing. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice level. I work at a bank. If you ever want a second pair of eyes. Leonard would kill me, she whispered, then caught herself. I mean, he'd be upset. He's very particular about who handles church finances. That night, I used my banking credentials to run a business search on Frontier Supplies LLC. Incorporated 6 months ago, no physical address beyond a P.O. box. The registered agent, a law firm known for creating shells. I needed more. Tuesday morning, Leonard left for a job site. Mom was at her book club. I had 40 minutes. His home office was locked, but I'd learned to pick locks in college, a skill my ex-husband had found unladylike, and I'd found useful. Inside, I photographed everything: bank statements, invoices, cancelled checks. My hands shook as I documented a clear pattern. Money flowed from the church building fund to Frontier Supplies, then to Pike Renovations as subcontractor payments. The amounts were staggered, the dates carefully spaced, but the total was staggering. In 6 months, Leonard had moved nearly $200,000 through his shell company. But the real discovery was a draft email on his computer, unsent. Increase my consultation fee to 12%, as discussed. The congregation won't notice if we adjust the lumber costs. I was photographing the screen when I heard the front door. Grace, Mom's voice, earlier than expected. I closed everything, relocked the door, and was stirring coffee in the kitchen when she found me. You're home, she said, suspicious. Lunch break, I smiled, my phone burning in my pocket with evidence that could destroy her marriage. That evening, Leonard cornered me in the laundry room. Evelyn says you were home today. Lunch break, I repeated, not meeting his eyes. He stepped closer, blocking the doorway. Funny thing, my office door was unlocked when I got home. Maybe you forgot. I never forget. His breath smelled like beer and menace. You know what I think, he said, his voice low. I think your failed marriage scrambled your brains, made you paranoid, seeing problems where there aren't any. I don't know what you're talking about. Good? He smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Because if I found out you were spreading lies about me, about the church's finances, he continued, well, this is a small town. People talk. A divorced woman with mental health issues making wild accusations about a respected church elder, that's the kind of thing that follows you. Makes it hard to keep a job, hard to find an apartment. The threat was clear, but he'd miscalculated. I'd already survived the worst, a marriage that ended, a life rebuilt from scratch. His intimidation was just another risk to manage. I understand, I said quietly. He stepped aside, satisfied. As I passed, he added, oh, and Grace, that lock on your door has been sticking. I'll have Kyle take a look at it tomorrow. That night, I uploaded everything to 3 different cloud services and emailed encrypted copies to myself. Then I lay in my unlockable room, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, and planned my next move. Leonard thought he held all the cards: the house, the church's trust, my mother's loyalty, but he'd forgotten the first rule of risk management. The biggest threat is always the one you dismiss. And he'd dismissed me from the start. The next morning, my door wouldn't open from the inside. The lock had been changed overnight. A keyed deadbolt that could only be opened from the hallway. A fire hazard. A prison. For your safety, Mom explained at breakfast, not meeting my eyes. Leonard says you've been sleepwalking. We wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. I hadn't sleepwalked since I was 12. We both knew it. That's thoughtful, I managed, watching Leonard butter his toast with satisfied precision. Carl bounded in, grabbing orange juice from the fridge. Hey, Grace. Dad says you're getting paranoid about church stuff. Maybe you should talk to someone, Carl continued. Dr. Ricks is good with, divorce trauma. The narrative was already being built: unstable divorce, paranoid delusions. Classic gaslighting, executed with the efficiency of a man who'd spent 20 years managing other people's money and trust. At work, I called Marisol Denton from my car during lunch. We'd been friends since college before she became an assistant district attorney specializing in non-profit fraud. Frontier Supplies is definitely a shell, she confirmed after I'd sent her the evidence. But Grace, this is dangerous. White-collar criminals get violent when cornered. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? I laughed, the sound bitter. He changed my bedroom lock. I'm literally locked in at night. That's false imprisonment. We could. No, I cut her off. Not yet. If we move too early, he'll destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses. The church needs to see this for what it is, or they'll rally around him. What do you need? Time, and maybe some backup for Sunday service. That evening, I found Mom in the kitchen, still in her church volunteer apron. The finance committee had met that afternoon. We need to talk about Leonard, I said quietly. Her face hardened. Your stepfather is a good man. Whatever problems you had in your marriage, don't project them. He's stealing from the church. The slap wasn't hard, but it was shocking. Mom had never hit me before. How dare you? Her voice shook. That man took us in when your father left. Gave you a home when your husband threw you out. And this is how you repay him. With lies? Mom, I have proof. I don't want to hear it. She turned away. Leonard warned me this might happen. Said divorce can trigger mental breaks in some women. Maybe Kyle's right. Maybe you do need to see Dr. Hriss. I touched my stinging cheek. What if I'm right? What if he's been lying to you all these years? Then I'd rather live with a liar than an ungrateful daughter, who destroys everything she touches. That night, locked in my room, I made a decision. Family loyalty only extended so far. The congregation deserved the truth, even if my mother couldn't handle it. I texted Ava from a burner phone I'd bought. Can you get me blank copies of the offering forms and the finance committee meeting schedule? Her response was quick. Leonard will notice. Let him. Thursday's finance meeting was my target. But first, I needed allies inside the church. I started with Martha Winters, the elderly Sunday school superintendent who taught me as a child. Her late husband had been a CPA. Strange things with the building fund, I probed carefully. She pursed her lips. Now that you mention it, Tom always said watching church money was like herding cats, but lately the numbers don't seem right. What do you mean? I asked. We've raised $400,000 for the roof, but the contractor bids I saw last year were all around $200,000. Where's the rest going? I showed her one invoice on my phone. Just one. Her sharp intake of breath told me everything. Frontier Supplies, she read. Never heard of them. And I know every building supplier in 3 counties. By Saturday, I had 4 allies, Martha, Ava, Harold Beck, a retired banker, and Susan Cho, whose husband ran a legitimate construction company. Each had noticed discrepancies. Each had been told by Leonard to trust the process. Sunday morning, I woke to find my doorknob removed entirely. A hole where the lock should be. Maintenance, Leonard said when I emerged for breakfast. That lock was definitely broken. The message was clear. I had no privacy, no safety, no power in his house. But he'd made a crucial error. In his arrogance, he'd forgotten that the church wasn't his house. And tomorrow, in front of God and the congregation, his real audit would begin. Saturday night, I met my team at Marisol's office. The conference table was covered with evidence, bank statements, invoices, corporate filings, and a forensic accounting report that Theo Rusk had worked 18 hours straight to complete. It's worse than you thought, Theo said, adjusting his glasses. His independent firm specialized in church fraud. A depressing niche, but a necessary one. Leonard's been running 3 separate schemes. The shell company is just the beginning, he said, spreading out a flowchart. First, he's been double billing. Pike Renovations bills the church for materials. Then, Frontier Supplies bills for the same materials at a 40% markup. Second, he's been taking administrative fees for managing the building fund. Unauthorized, of course. Third, and this is the clever part, he's been writing checks to cash, marking them as petty expenses, then redepositing them into his personal account. Total theft. $347,000 over 18 months, Marisol asked. The room went silent. Ava looked sick. I signed some of those checks, she whispered. He said they were for emergency repairs. That we'd reconcile them later. You were manipulated, Marisol assured her. Leonard knew exactly how to exploit your trust. But tomorrow, we end this. She laid out the plan. I've already filed for a civil asset freeze order. It'll be served Monday morning, but we need the congregation to understand what's happening before Leonard can spin it. Grace has requested time during the service to address financial transparency, which is allowed under church bylaws. He'll try to stop me, I said. That's why I'll be sitting next to you. Marisol smiled grimly, 2 Kestrel County Sheriff's deputies in the parking lot waiting for my signal. If Leonard so much as touches you, he'll be arrested for assault. What about Pastor Hale? Susan asked. He trusts Leonard completely. We'll give him copies of the report during the offering, Martha said. Along with every board member. They'll have the truth in their hands before Leonard can react. I looked around the table at these people. Some I'd known for years, others just days. All risking Leonard's wrath to protect their church. Why are you helping me? I asked. Harold Beck spoke first. Because I've watched good churches die from financial cancer. It starts with one person thinking they are above accountability. Because I'm tired of being treated like a stupid girl, Ava added. Leonard's been patronizing me since day one. Martha's eyes were steely. Because 40 years ago, another treasurer stole from this church. My Tom caught him. I won't let it happen again. We rehearsed the sequence during the offering. Ava would distribute sealed envelopes to board members containing executive summaries of Theo's report. I would request to speak during announcement time, citing the bylaw that allowed members to address financial concerns. Marisol would be recording everything, her presence a visible reminder of legal oversight. What if he gets violent? I asked. Then he proves our point, Marisol said. A man with nothing to hide doesn't attack his accuser in God's house. I thought about the missing doorknob, the changed lock, the escalating control. He's already violent. He just hasn't left marks yet. Yet, Marisol emphasized. That's why we have backup. Grace, if you feel unsafe at any point before tomorrow, you call me, and we'll extract you. But I knew I wouldn't call. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about every time he'd called me a failure. Every night locked in that basement room. Every lie he'd told my mother about my mental state. Tomorrow, in front of everyone who'd believed him, the truth would finally speak. We ended the meeting with logistics. Theo would arrive early to set up a laptop displaying the evidence. Harold would ensure the sound system was on and recording. Martha would have ushers ready to maintain order if needed. Get some sleep, Marisol advised as we packed up. Tomorrow will be intense. Sleep in a room without a functioning door, in a house with a man who'd stolen $347,000 and thought nothing of imprisoning his stepdaughter. I drove home slowly, memorizing Theo's report, rehearsing my words. In 12 hours, Leonard Pike would face his judgment day. He'd built his kingdom on lies and intimidation, thinking his position made him untouchable. He was wrong, and tomorrow, in front of the God he claimed to serve and the people he'd betrayed, he'd learn exactly how wrong he was. The porch light was off when I arrived. The house dark except for Leonard's office window, a yellow rectangle in the darkness, where he was probably reviewing his own numbers, confident in his control. I slipped inside quietly, descended to my prison cell of a room, through the hole where my doorknob should be. I could see the hallway light click on. Footsteps approached. Then they stopped. Tomorrow's a big day, Leonard's voice floated through the hole. The final payment for the roof project. The congregation will be so grateful. I said nothing, lying still in the darkness. Sweet dreams, Grace. His footsteps retreated, but I didn't need sweet dreams. I had spreadsheets, and in the morning, there would be his nightmare. Sunday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully, a modest blue dress, minimal makeup, my grandmother's cross necklace, the outfit of a trustworthy woman, not the hysterical divorcee Leonard had painted me as. At breakfast, the tension was suffocating. Leonard read his newspaper with theatrical calm. Mom clinked dishes with nervous energy. Kyle scrolled through his phone, oblivious. "You're coming to service?" Leonard asked without looking up. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. His eyes flicked to mine. "Good. Pastor Hale is announcing the roof completion. A day of celebration." I buttered my toast steadily. Indeed. Harvestgate Fellowship stood proud against the morning sky, its soon-to-be-replaced roof gleaming with dew. I arrived 30 minutes early, watching Theo's van in the parking lot. Harold's car by the side entrance. Pieces moving into position. Inside, Ava was already at the sound booth with the tech team. She gave me a tiny nod. The recording equipment was live, streaming to a secure server. Whatever happened would be preserved. Martha commanded her usual pew, third row center, her purse bulging with sealed envelopes throughout the sanctuary. My allies took strategic positions, natural, unremarkable, ready. Marisol arrived at 9:45, professional in her blue blazer, a leather portfolio in hand. She slid in beside me, smelling of coffee and determination. "Deputies are in position," she murmured. "Back parking lot, plain clothes. You ready?" Before I could answer, Leonard's voice boomed from the narthex. "Sister Martinez, what brings you to our humble church?" Marisol turned, smiling. Just visiting my friend Grace, Mr. Pike. Beautiful morning for worship. His eyes narrowed, calculating. A prosecutor at his stepdaughter's side. Not part of his plan, but he recovered quickly, all false warmth. Any friend of Grace's is welcome here. The service began. Hymns, prayers, scripture, normal Sunday routine while my heart hammered. During the offering, I watched Ava move, smooth as silk. She placed envelopes on board members' chairs, as they stood to sing. 9 envelopes, 9 bombs. Harold Beck was the first to open his. His face went pale, then red. He nudged Deacon Williams. Within minutes, whispers rippled through the board section like fire through dry grass. Pastor Hale, leading the offering prayer, remained oblivious. But Leonard noticed from his treasurer's seat on the platform. He watched the board members reading, whispering, their faces transforming from confusion to horror. And now, Pastor Hale announced as the offering concluded, our building committee chair has wonderful news about our renovation project. Leonard stood, but before he could speak, I rose. Pastor, I said, I'd like to invoke Bylaw 7.3, a member's right to address financial concerns before any monetary announcements. The congregation stirred. Pastor Hale looked confused. Sister Whitaker, this is highly irregular but legal, Marisol said, standing beside me. Under your church constitution. Leonard's mask slipped. Sit down, Grace. Now I have the floor, I said, my voice carrying. And I have evidence that our building fund has been systematically embezzled. Gasps, murmurs. Leonard stepped toward the platform stairs. She's having an episode, he announced. My stepdaughter has been struggling with mental health since her divorce. $347,000. I interrupted, pulling out Theo's summary. Stolen through shell companies, double billing, and fraudulent cash withdrawals. Board members, check your envelopes. Leonard descended the platform steps fast, aggressive. You ungrateful, Mr. Pike. Marisol's voice was calm. I'd advise you to stop right there. But he didn't. He pushed past confused congregants, face twisted with rage. Martha tried to block him. He shoved her aside. Martha, 78 years old, stumbled into a pew. A collective gasp. You don't push elderly women in church. Enough, he roared, reaching our row. You're sick, Grace. Delusional. I've tried to help you, but his hand grabbed my shoulder, fingers digging in. But as he raised his other hand, Marisol spoke clearly. That's assault, Mr. Pike. On camera, with 90 witnesses. The church had gone dead silent. Every eye on us, every phone suddenly recording. Behind Leonard, the sanctuary doors opened. 2 deputies entered, hands on their service weapons. Last chance, Marisol said quietly. Let her go. Leonard's grip tightened. I saw the moment he realized he'd lost the money, the reputation, the control, his kingdom of lies collapsing in real time. Show them, I said loud enough for everyone. Show them who you really are. That's when he snapped. His fist connected with my cheekbone, a sharp crack that echoed through the sanctuary like a gunshot. Pain exploded across my face. But I didn't fall. I stood there, blood trickling from my split lip, and smiled. Thank you, I said clearly, for showing everyone exactly who you are. The sanctuary erupted. Women screamed. Men jumped to their feet. The deputies were already moving, cutting through the chaos with practiced efficiency. Leonard Pike, you're under arrest for assault, Deputy Chen's voice cut through the noise as his partner circled behind Leonard. Hands behind your back. She's lying. Leonard struggled as the cuffs clicked shut. The money. She's making it up. Tell them, Evelyn. My mother sat frozen in her pew, face white as paper. Kyle beside her, mouth hanging open, his worldview shattering in real time. Tell them about Frontier Supplies, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. Tell them why you needed $347,000 in church funds. Shut up. Leonard thrashed against the deputies. You destroyed this family. You, Mr. Pike, Deputy Martinez cut him off, beginning the Miranda warning, anything you say can and will be used against you. Behind me, Theo had connected his laptop to the church's projection system. Suddenly, the evidence bloomed across the sanctuary walls, invoices, bank statements, the damning paper trail of Leonard's theft. Sweet Jesus, someone whispered. It's all there. Pastor Hale stood at the pulpit, gripping it for support. This can't be. Leonard has served this church for 20 years. 20 years of theft, Harold Beck said, standing with the forensic report. Pastor, we need an emergency board meeting now. As the deputies led Leonard toward the exit, he locked eyes with me one last time. You'll regret this. You think you've won. Mr. Pike, Marisol interrupted, I'd advise you to stop talking. You're already facing assault charges and grand theft. Don't add witness intimidation. They dragged him out, his dress shoes scuffing the carpet he'd walked so proudly for 2 decades. Through the windows, I watched them load him into the squad car, his face twisted with rage behind the glass. Inside, the congregation buzzed like a disturbed hive. Board members huddled over Theo's report. Ava fielded questions from confused members. Martha, recovered from Leonard's shove, directed traffic with military precision. Grace, Pastor Hale approached me, looking aged by the morning's revelations. I owe you an apology. When Leonard said you were troubled, I believed him. He was convincing, I said, accepting Marisol's offered tissue for my bleeding lip. That's how men like him operate. The church will need to press charges, he continued. Will you help us? Every step of the way. Mom appeared at my elbow, tears streaming. Grace, Not now, I said gently but firmly. We'll talk later. Right now, the church needs to deal with this. The emergency board meeting convened in the fellowship hall. Theo presented his findings with clinical precision. The scope of Leonard's theft became clearer with each slide, inflated invoices, payments to non-existent vendors, a web of financial manipulation that touched every aspect of the building fund. We'll need a full forensic audit, Harold announced, every transaction for the past 5 years. And new financial controls, Susan added. No single person should have this much power over church funds again. Motion to immediately freeze all building fund accounts and revoke Leonard Pike's signing authority, Martha said. Seconded. It came from multiple voices. All in favor. Every hand rose. As the meeting continued, Marisol pulled me aside. You did good, but this is just the beginning. Criminal trial, civil recovery, probably bankruptcy proceedings for Leonard when the judgments hit. I know, I touched my swelling cheek. But it's over. The secret's out. Your mom. I glanced at Mom, huddled with Kyle in the corner. Their perfect family narrative in ruins. She'll either accept the truth or she won't. That's her choice. By noon, the parking lot was full of police cars and news vans. Someone had leaked the story. Probably one of the 100 witnesses who'd recorded Leonard's meltdown. Church treasurer assaults stepdaughter after $300,000 embezzlement exposed would be Monday's headline. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted from shock to determination. Members approached me throughout the day, some offering support, others sharing suspicions they'd harbored but never voiced. Leonard's carefully constructed image had crumbled completely. Grace, Ava appeared with a key. This was in Leonard's church office. I think it's yours. My bedroom door key. Freedom. Finally. As the sun set over Harvestgate Fellowship, I stood in the sanctuary where hours earlier I'd been struck. The blood was cleaned up. The chaos settled. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, reporters, and the long journey of recovery. But tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep in an unlocked room. Justice had begun with a fist and ended with handcuffs. And sometimes, that's exactly how it should be. The handcuffs clicked shut with the soft finality of a closing hymnal. Leonard Pike, pillar of the church, master of the ledger, my mother's chosen savior, stood in the center aisle like a common criminal because that's exactly what he was. This is a mistake, he shouted as Deputy Chen guided him toward the exit. 20 years I've served this church. Ask anyone. We are asking the books, Harold Beck replied coldly, holding up the forensic report. They are quite talkative. The congregation parted like the Red Sea as the deputies escorted Leonard out. Some stared in shock, others filmed with their phones, documenting the fall of a man they'd trusted with their tithes and offerings. Through the stained glass windows, blue and red lights painted rainbow patterns on the pews. The media had arrived with supernatural speed. Nothing drew cameras like a church scandal involving money, violence, and a courageous whistleblower with a black eye. Grace, Pastor Hale approached, his pastoral authority shaken but not broken. The board is implementing an immediate audit. We'll need your testimony, your evidence, everything. You'll have it, I promised. As Marisol packed her recording equipment, every second of Leonard's assault was preserved in high definition from multiple angles. The congregation's phones had turned into 100 witnesses for the prosecution. In the fellowship hall, the emergency board meeting moved with unprecedented efficiency. Motions passed unanimously. Immediate termination of Leonard Pike from all church positions. Freeze on all accounts pending forensic audit. Criminal charges to be pursued to the fullest extent. Civil recovery action for all stolen funds. New financial oversight committee with mandatory rotation. Furthermore, Martha announced, steel in her voice, I motion that Grace Whittaker receive a formal apology from this board for our failure to protect her from retaliation when she tried to expose this corruption. Seconded, came from multiple voices. Pastor Hale stood. Miss Whittaker, on behalf of Harvestgate Fellowship, I deeply apologize. We failed you when you brought concerns. We should have listened. Instead, we allowed Leonard Pike to paint you as unstable, to gaslight you in your own home. This board bears responsibility for that failure. I accepted their apology with a grace I didn't feel. My cheek throbbed. My lip was swelling, but I stood tall in that fellowship hall. No longer the divorced failure hiding in a basement room. Outside, reporters thrust microphones forward. Miss Whittaker, can you comment? My client will issue a statement through proper channels, Marisol said. Marisol interrupted, guiding me to her car. No comments at this time, she said, but I stopped, turned to the cameras. Actually, I do have something to say, I said, turning to the cameras. To anyone out there being financially abused, gaslit, controlled through money, document everything, find allies, and never let them convince you that you're crazy for seeing the truth. We drove to the police station, where I gave a detailed statement. The assault charges were straightforward, a room full of witnesses, video evidence, my swelling face. The financial crimes would take longer to prosecute, but Theo's report gave prosecutors a roadmap. He'll likely plea bargain, the detective explained. With this much evidence, trial would be suicide. By evening, I was back at Mom's house. It was strange to still think of it that way. She sat at the kitchen table, Carl beside her, both looking lost. How long? Mom asked. 2 weeks with proof, years with suspicion, I replied. Why didn't you come to me? I touched my bruised face gently. Would you have believed me? Her silence was answer enough. Kyle spoke up. What happens now to the house? I mean, if Dad Leonard goes to prison. The civil suits will take everything, I said honestly. The house, his business, any assets, the church will recover what they can. Victims of financial crimes get priority. We're victims too, Mom said sharply. Are you? I asked. You got a house, a lifestyle. 20 years of being Mrs. Pike. What did I get? A locked door and accusations of mental illness. That night, with my bedroom door blessedly unlocked, I made lists, apartment listings, job applications in other cities. This town would always see me as the woman who brought down Leonard Pike. Some would praise me, others would blame me for destroying a good man. But I'd sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere in county lockup, Leonard Pike was learning what it felt like to be trapped in a room he couldn't leave. The collection plate would pass honestly next Sunday. The roof would still get fixed with legitimate contractors and real invoices, and Harvest Gate Fellowship would slowly heal from the cancer of corrupted trust. As for me, I'd already won. Not because Leonard was in handcuffs, though that helped, but because I'd stood up in that sanctuary, faced my abuser, and spoken truth to power. The bruise would fade. The money would be recovered. But the moment Leonard Pike's fist proved everything I'd said, that was forever, and it was worth every second of fear that led to it. The next morning, the headline was everything I'd expected. Church treasurer arrested in $347,000 embezzlement scandal. Embezzlement scheme after striking whistleblower, stepdaughter during service. My bruised face stared back from news sites across the state, the righteous woman who'd taken a punch for the truth. 3 days later, I stood on the courthouse steps watching Leonard's lawyer argue for bail. The judge, unmoved by pleas about Leonard's community standing, set it at $500,000. The church's frozen accounts meant he'd sit in county jail until trial. 6 to 8 years minimum, Marisol predicted as we left, more if he doesn't cooperate with asset recovery. The investigation revealed deeper rot. Leonard had been skimming for 5 years, starting small, growing bolder. 3 other churches in neighboring counties found similar irregularities in projects he'd managed. The final tally would exceed $500,000. Pastor Hale resigned, taking responsibility for his oversight failure. The congregation elected new leadership, including Martha Winters as interim board chair and Ava Boone as head of the new Financial Transparency Committee. They implemented triple signature requirements, monthly audits, and public posting of all expenditures. We are calling it the Grace Whitaker Protocol, Ava told me proudly. Mom filed for divorce the day Leonard was formally indicted. She'd finally seen the evidence, not just the theft, but the secret gambling debts, the affairs with church secretaries, the trail of broken trust stretching back years. The house went to foreclosure. She moved in with her sister in Nebraska. Our relationship was forever fractured, but not quite severed. Kyle surprised me. He got a job, a real one, and started community college. I'm sorry, he said the day before I left town, for not seeing it, for being part of it. You were a kid with a dad, I replied. Now you get to be a man without one. 6 months later, I watched Leonard's sentencing via live stream from my new apartment in Chicago. 7 years federal prison, 3 years supervised release, full restitution ordered. He stood in his orange jumpsuit, diminished, ordinary. Just another number in the system he'd thought himself above. Any statement, Mr. Pike, the judge asked. I was trying to help the church, he began, but the judge cut him off. The evidence suggests otherwise. The systematic nature of your theft, combined with your attempt to discredit and assault the whistleblower, shows a pattern of deliberate criminal behavior. Your betrayal of trust is particularly egregious given your position. The gavel came down. Leonard was led away in shackles, and I closed my laptop with quiet satisfaction. My new job, at a financial consulting firm specialized in non-profit fraud prevention. I traveled to churches, teaching them to spot the Leonard Pikes before they could take root. My bruised face had become my calling card, proof that speaking truth to power came with a price worth paying. One Sunday, I found myself in a small church in Iowa, training their finance committee. An elderly treasurer approached afterward. "My son-in-law handles our building fund," she said quietly. "Some things seem off. Trust your instincts," I told her, "and document everything." She nodded, resolve hardening in her eyes. Another Leonard Pike would fall. Another congregation would be saved. That night, in my hotel room, I got a text from Marisol. "Thought you should know. Full restitution payment hit the church account today. They are voting to use part of it for a financial literacy program for abuse survivors. They are calling it the Grace Initiative." I smiled, touching my cheek where the bruise had long since faded. Leonard had thought he was untouchable, protected by his position, his manipulation, his ability to make me seem crazy. He'd locked my door, changed my locks, tried to imprison me in his narrative. But I'd kept better records than he had, found better allies, and when he'd raised his fist in God's house, he'd written his own ending. The key Ava had returned to me sat on my keychain, a reminder that no door stays locked forever if you're willing to fight for the key. Sometimes justice comes quietly through spreadsheets and audit trails. Sometimes it comes loudly with handcuffs and headlines, and sometimes it comes with a single punch thrown in anger caught on camera proving everything the numbers had whispered. Leonard Pike had given me a black eye and a story worth telling. I'd given him a federal prisoner number and a legacy of shame. I'd call that a fair trade. As I turned off the hotel room light, I thought about all the Grace Whitakers out there, trapped in basement rooms, gaslit into silence, told they are crazy for seeing the truth. To them, I had one message: document. Build allies. Speak truth. And when they swing at you, because they always swing when cornered, make sure the whole world is watching. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure the next person won't have to fight as hard as you did. And that's worth every bruise along the way. Your own experiences and perspectives make these stories richer for everyone.